of all the nights that I worked at the White House, you're always at some level of ready for someone to jump the fence, for shots to be fired, for something to go down. And we had plans, we had protocols, we had practiced this stuff. When the president's not in the White House, it's Secret Service in there practicing evacuations, practicing what we're going to do in the event of X. And so, and I feel like I can tell this story now, but is sometime around midnight, we get this crackle over the radio, and it's our Joint Operation Command Center saying, and I can't remember the word that we had for it, but basically, if you hear this word, it's like stop what you're doing and listen. And crash. They would say crash. I don't think they do that anymore. It's a crash, 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 and then game on. And what we got? We got a fence jumper. We got some crazy in Lafayette Park shooting off bottle rocket. What do we got? And they said inbound aircraft. It's like inbound aircraft. Everything's supposed to be down. And so inbound aircraft was like, do what? How's that even possible? Well, shoot it down, for heaven's sakes. What why are you telling us? It ought to be smoke already. Yeah. Should be done. And so then they give you the speed, the altitude, and the direction. And all of those were very bad.
Like significant?
Significant.
Like fast and low?
Very fast, not very high, and on an absolute beeline for the White House. Well, what we found out in the aftermath was that a lot of navigation equipment for airplanes, Washington, D.C. is queued on the 0 milestone, which sits on the south grounds of the White House. So if you point yourself to D.C., you're actually pointing at the White House. So they're tracking the trajectory of this thing. They're trying to reach out to it. They're not getting a response. It's not giving off the right beacon call. It's just not doing anything right. So jets are scrambling, and we're presented with, here's how much time you got to live if you don't do something. Yeah. And so we get this information, and our boss that night, his name was Jeff, just a classy, straight up great agent, one of the finest people I've ever met, much less an agent. I mean, he just aces. It was his decision. And he made the easy, really, decision to evacuate the White House, which then meant going to wake up the president and first lady who just got to sleep. Yeah. It's been a day.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to go wake them up, and you better be right in your assessment.
Yeah. How do you wake up the president?
Very carefully.
I mean, what? Do you knock on the door? Do you open the door?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Both?
Yeah, both.
So, I mean,
both knock and go, because time was kind of the essence here. So it was, kind of a knock, announce, and grab you by the shoulders because you don't know what planet you're on. Yeah. And let's go. Wow. And let's move. And okay, grab the house coat, but let's go.
No
and so
shit.
it's boxers and nightgowns and house coats.
Really?
And let's go.
And I know that, you've got to be careful about some of the protocols of what all that entails and where they go and how they do it. I mean, of what you can talk about, can you talk about any of that? Like, is it down and out through the bottom? Is it, can you say anything?
It's tough. Yeah, no.
I can't really say anything.
But you know what? And that doesn't even tell the best part of the story for me, because the decision was made to evacuate, and all I'll say is we evacuated.
Yeah.
But not all of us. And this is what I remember so well, is that the decisions made to evacuate. Now, there's still a little thought process that goes on here, because our protocols at that point were built around a ground attack. You're under attack, whatever it is, and so we do a hostile evacuation. Get them, grab them by the scruff of the neck if you have to, and let's go. Yeah. Chicken walk them out if you have to. Yeah. And so that's what we were doing. But based on where you were in the lineup that night, you had to think, because you have a different response and a different role based on where you are, and we're continually rotating.
Yeah.
So every 15 to 30 minutes, you're rotating, and so where am I and what am I doing? And you get to where, that's the first thing you think of when you rotate. All right, I'm now in this position. If it goes down, here's my responsibility in this effort. And I said recently on another show, I said, it's like duck, duck, goose. You're duck, 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 duck. Valentine, you're the goose.
Yeah.
And I was the goose that night. And so I was to cover the evacuation and then stay behind and fight.
Really?
And so here I am with a very low caliber weapon, a pistol and a shoulder weapon. And I think at the time we had MP5s on that post. And so full auto for all it's worth, shooting at airplanes, not a lot.
Yeah.
But that was the protocol. And there wasn't time to argue about that. You know, you did what you're supposed to do. I covered the evacuation, and then you stand your ground and fight the good fight. And the uniformed division officers also stay and fight, and so you're not alone. But for me, what that caused was a major reflection. And so I'm thinking, I've got a gas mask, I've got a shoulder weapon, and I've got a pistol and a radio.
And a bad attitude.
And so I literally looked at the structure of the White House, and I looked for what I thought was the strongest point, which was the very end of the house where there's a fairly thick doorway and it's rounded. And I thought, well, this will either make for a great place to survive, or it'll be a really cool grave, because I've seen what happens when airplanes hit buildings now.
Yeah.
And
It's
not pretty.
Yeah.
And so I had a moment there to reflect and to think, well, this is it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to go tonight. And you know what? I had perfect peace. I was good with it.
Yeah.
I really, it didn't even bother me. I was just like, well, all right, this is how it ends. They're going to put a plaque for me up at headquarters, and you know, I'll be remembered for 10, 15 minutes at least. Yeah. And I remember thinking about my wife and thinking, I've got 2 little kids. Didn't think about my son much. I was thinking about my daughter, and I was thinking, well,
don't tell him that.
Yeah, no kid. Well, he knows. He's heard it before, but I don't know why I didn't think about him. But I was thinking about my wife and daughter, and thinking, well, she can do a lot better than me anyway. So I hope she gets a good one in round 2, and I hope he's a good daddy for my daughter. I wish that upon them, but you know, I'll see you later.
That's a sobering thought, huh?
Yeah, well, it didn't last long, because we had this thought, and then luckily it turned out to be, I think what it was, and this would be the first time I ever give my hypothesis, but I believe it was like a National Guard fighter jet that was coming probably from Shaw Air Force Base. So he puts the beacon sound in. He's headed for DC, but he's on the wrong frequency, and he's not transponding correctly. And so
fucking National Guard guys.
That's my guess. And so, but what I
guess.
Understand is that the Andrews F-16 circled around him and locked on, and I think his in cockpit
spidey senses.
Well, I think he got an alarm that said you're about to be shot down, and he came on the right frequency pretty quick after that and diverted. And you know, the president and first lady were very gracious. I mean, more gracious than I would have been in that situation. Wow. But man, that was it was one of those pucker moments that you had to unpucker pretty quick and then work the rest of the night.
Yeah.
We still didn't know. There might be a ground attack coming for all we know. You just didn't know.
Man, I got a million fucking questions. I feel like I could do an entire episode on this day, but I'll try to highlight the ones that stick out. Did you have an opportunity, or did you take an opportunity to communicate anything to your wife in that window of time of like you couldn't?
No. No, in fact, it didn't even cross my mind to try. I mean, here it was midnight. I hoping she was asleep. And so, really before smartphones and all that stuff. So no, I didn't even.
From the time, what time did you get to the White House?
It must have been 8 o'clock.
Okay. So you had a few hours before that happened.
Yeah.
Like I can only imagine the vibe that was taking place inside the White House in that window before you evacuated. It had to have felt different, right?
It did feel different.
Can you try to describe it?
I can try. It was very sober. I mean, there were typically there was always some fun going on at the White House. I mean, very seldom was it just totally sober. But on this night in particular, there was no smoking and no joking, not among the agents, not with the president, not with the staff. I mean, in the military, it was all business.
Yeah.
And nobody's just in a mood to joke, you know.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a funny moment.
Yeah.
I think everybody was really taken aback. I mean, I don't think the younger generation can appreciate the fact that we thought we were invincible.
Yeah.
And we didn't think that we could get attacked. I mean, we saw Pearl Harbor. That'll never happen again. Well, it did.
Yeah.
You know, we got our ass kicked. So I think there was just kind of shock.
Yeah. I mean, so kind of similarly, I was at SEAL Team 3 in a platoon at that time, and you know, it was West Coast. So like I was driving to work on Interstate 5 South, you know, from North County down into Coronado when it came over the radio that the second plane had hit. So, you know, I'm on my way, you know, even by the time I got there, you know, there's a mile-long line. You know, now they're like dragging people out of the car, checking every fucking thing. And it took like several hours to get on base. But the vibe and the energy at SEAL Team 3 that day was just so fucking different, you know. And similarly, like it's hard to even, you really can't put it into words. There's just this weird tension and energy, and like, man, not that we weren't ready to go to war before, not that we weren't training for it, but like now it's happening, you know. And it's just in a whole different way, you know. And
I think everybody who had that sheepdog mentality at that point was ready to go.
Yeah, had that same like, let's grab our shit.